My name is Butch, and I'm an alcoholic. And that was, once I understood what alcoholism was about, and I met you guys, and you talked to me about how you drank and how you looked at life before you got here, and since you've been here, it's really nice to be able to say that about myself, to discover what the heck was really going on with me all my life. Because I was always looking for something, something that I didn't know what it was. And it's really a good feeling to finally get a clue about what's going on with me. And as elusive as that is, it's still good to get that. My sponsor told me to tell the truth, so I'll do that as best I can. I was over there a couple weeks ago. Larcy and I split a pitch, and I was thinking about, you always before you talk, you think about, what can I say, or hopefully you don't think that, but you do anyway. And so I mentioned to my sponsor how it'd be nice I'd give a talk on understanding Al-Anonism, And my sponsor, Dick, just kind of looked at me, and he gives me his kind of look and his gentle smile, and he just says, well, why don't you just speak on a subject you know something about? So, okay, fair deal. So I decided to just come tell the truth here. I kind of, I was already getting a piece of literature ready and everything, I thought I'd make a nice one to get some people's attention. Anyway, like I was saying, I didn't know I was an alcoholic, up until I met some people from AA, after I'd been beaten up enough by alcohol to listen. I'm one of 9 children. I have 6 sisters and 2 brothers, and we're raised Catholic religion. And I've since moved from that. But anyway, I've always been a real selfish, self-centered, overreact to situations, and no coping skills. Other than that, I had life wired. But I never knew any of this stuff. I never took the time, or was able to take the time, to look back in my life on how I looked at what was going on with me. Something would happen, and it would be, either a disastrous outcome or something, and then I would always just, instead of taking the time to look at it like I can do now, I'd just move on to the next thing, and consequently I never learned much, other than life became more and more painful the longer I was in it, and consequently the more I wanted out of it. Like I was saying, I needed to drink as soon as I was born, actually. I think would have been a really good idea. 'Cause my first remembrance of being alive is my family, some of my sisters, I guess, had gone down to Mexico with my parents, or one of my parents, and I remember just being in the closet, walking out of this dark closet in the bedroom and being angry at these people, resenting them, because I didn't get to go. It doesn't matter that I was too young to go or whatever, but I still that was my first remembrance of being around my family, was resenting them and feeling alienated from them. I didn't realize that was a feeling at the time. At the time, I just was pissed and just felt anxious, and that's just the way I went on with my life. I never, knew I had a resentment. Didn't even know what that was, That's a really interesting part of getting sober is you guys speak an entirely different language than I ever heard. I had all kinds of words to learn to fit what was going on with me, and thank God you were here for me, Anyway, I went through that one, and went along, and I went to kindergarten. And that was my first experience with what I like to call the outside world. And went to kindergarten the first day there, and went along through the day, and then it was nap time in the afternoon, and everyone, went to take their nap, and I stood up and took off all my clothes but my underwear, and I was the only one that did that, and they all thought it was hilarious, but I didn't think it was too funny, I spent the rest of the day crying and feeling sorry for myself, and I never went back, that was kind of my MO. I never went back again. Consequently, my mom, who was a little burnt out on all those kids, we had to go somewhere as we got older, and so I started going to work with my dad, and he was a plastering contractor at the time, and so I got to, go around and see those guys, the plasters with the pint in the back pocket and the snuff and all that stuff, and I was around that, and the crap games and the garages and all that. I thought it was kind of neat, it was interesting. But, as I got older, it was time to go to grade school, the first grade. We lived across the street from a school, and on 60th and Crenshaw there. We lived in Los Angeles at the time, and I'd seen, my sisters went there, and I'd seen what went on over there. They just go across the street and go to school and go about your business, and there's nuns over there, and all that stuff. And so I'm over there with my uniform on and my first day of school, and the bell rings. As soon as the bell rang, I got this knot in my stomach. I was gone, right across the yard, across the street, and in the house. And you should have seen the look on my mom's face. Here he is again, one more time. I'm standing there, and I didn't understand all this fear that I had. I didn't know where this stuff came from. I just was going to go to school. And then when the bell rang, something went off inside me, and I just had to split. I went back, though, the next day. Enough was enough for my mom there. And I went back and started going to school and, meeting the nuns and doing all that. And I got introduced to the Catholic religion. They would talk about God and all that. And I really liked the feeling I would get when I would, what I like to call, I guess, hook up with God. Like when I was doing what was right. And, I got a real good feeling inside me. But it also started a lot of conflict as I got older because it became harder and harder for me to do what I thought was necessary to deserve to have God on my side, I guess, is more or less it. There's a lot of rules and the way I looked at things, it was, I had to be perfect in order for God to love me. And the older I got, the harder that was to do, and it became a real conflict. On the one hand, I had the real good feeling I got when I felt like I was doing right, and then the impossibility of doing that all the time. And I guess that's pretty standard thinking as it goes. Anyway, went through grade school and no big events. Just kind of went along and did my best to not get in too much trouble. Went to high school. Had to go to Catholic high school. Went to a Catholic boys' high school. And they had brothers there, and it was the same kind of thing as the nuns. They were tell you how much God loved you, and they'd smack you. It's pretty intense, And I just, had a lot of conflict with that. Man, this is confusing, just real confusing to me. I started drinking somewhere in my freshman, sophomore year, I guess. Somewhere in there. We just started going down the beach. I lived at the beach, and we used to surf, and some of the older guys' brothers would be able to buy us something to drink, so we'd go down to Hermosa Beach and get a quart of Country Club malt liquor and try and drink that and get home back to Manhattan Beach without throwing up or getting arrested. That was our activity for the weekend, the start of our drinking. And it was fun. When I took my first drink, it wasn't, no bells went off or anything for me. I just was trying not to throw up, but I liked the idea of being able to, I guess, get away with something. It's just kind of like my own little deal. And I like that. A couple years later, we started adding drugs to our alcohol. And, and away we went. And the longer I drank, and I found that kind of took a lot of the edge off of what I'd been feeling all my life. Slowly it's worked its way into being really comfortable for me. And consequently, I wanted to do it all the time, It's progressive. And I discovered I have a real dislike for any kind of responsibility. I developed the wonderful philosophy that, life should be just, you can sit around and smile. That's, why not, Something you bring over food for you to eat and sit around and drink, and then you sit around and smile and everything's wonderful. That was kind of my philosophy for living. It doesn't work very good, So, I would work and get a good feeling from work, and then I would, work would be finished, and I collect unemployment as long as I could, and then when I run out of unemployment, I go back and go to work again, and I like that. But like I was saying, the periods of being unemployed were more and more to my liking. So I used to sit around and resent not having a lot of money so I could do that full time, and so, the world was wrong one more time with me. And, kind of went on from there, I would try to achieve some good stuff, and then, like I say, go on and do something else. The drinking was getting kind of powerful there, and at one time I traded I don't know what I did, traded a panel truck or something, or paid a car, panel truck for a car and a motorcycle, and I started riding this motorcycle around, and this girl was hitchhiking one day, and I picked her up, and I fell in love, being such a deep person at the time, such a relationship person, that's just the way I was, pretty shallow guy, but it's the best I could do. And she got pregnant, and then we had to get married because her dad said you had to go into service or get married. And being Oh, gee, let me see, you know. I can stay home and have sex whenever I want, or I can go into service. So, a real moral, real complicated decision there for me. And so we got married, and we had a daughter by that marriage, and but it only lasted like a year. And when that broke up, I looking back, I used that as a real excuse to drink and use. Oh, poor me, you know. Oh, I'm separated from my wife. She has the baby, and I'm all on my own, and she left me, and blah blah blah. You know, I never looked at the fact that I was just plenty screwed up, and we didn't have anything going on relationship wise anyway. I don't blame her for leaving. I'd have left. I wouldn't even married me in the first place, but But anyway, I used that in my drinking for a long time. Whenever I'd be feeling down, I could always fall back on that to feel even worse. And so I did. And consequently, my drinking got heavier, and right along with the self-pity, and the disease progressed. Less and less work, more and more alcohol. I was bouncing around doing that for a while, and every so often I get, every so often you recover from your disease a little bit, and you try and pull it back together and make some sense of things. And this one time, my sister lived in Alaska, and she said you can come up there and you can go to lumberjack camp, and you can save some money because there's nowhere to spend it. They put you on an island, and I thought, well, okay, maybe this would work, maybe get ahead somehow. And so I went up there, and I never did make it to lumberjack camp. Her father-in-law was a bartender at the Sourdough Bar and Grill right there on the water in Ketchikan, and the bars there are open till like 5 in the morning, and they close for an hour and a half while they clean up, and then they start over again. And I used to sit in there and get about every other drink free, and that was fun. That was my drinking was working back then still to some extent, and I enjoyed it up there. I worked in the pulp mill for a while they had up there, and then got introduced to Everclear up there. That's 190 proof grain alcohol. It's kind of tangy, make you a little hoarse, We used to drink it with Nesbitt's orange juice. It was different. And they used to water drinks with it up there, and they all sit around and feed it to the poor Indians up there and watch them fight each other. The entertainment was really different up there than around here. It was a different cultural deal. Anyway, I was up there for a while, and came back down here, and kind of started doing the same thing I was doing before I went to Alaska to get away from all that stuff, and the drinking, and just not feeling, just feeling dissatisfied with myself. And a friend of mine was working in Point Loma down south, hanging drywall, and so I figured, well, I'll go down there and work with him for a while. So we were down Point Loma, and he used to go on the weekends down to Tijuana, a real resort spot, and spend his weekends down there. So I started going down with him, and then we were bouncing around there, hanging out with those wonderful women in the bars there, real classy guy, and so we decided, well, let's do something really good, but make a real move here, and we decided to move down to Tijuana. And so we moved to Tijuana down by the boat ring there, and talk about stupid. I mean, I can't even relate to people who speak English, and then I go and move to Mexico where they speak Spanish so I can really get out of it, It's just bizarre. It was real painful, but I knew no way out of it. I didn't stay there too long, probably a month or so. It's really hard to remember, to tell you the truth. And I came back up here for a visit, and my ex-wife's sister overdosed on drugs and alcohol and died, and I just kind of floundered around up here and started running around with some of her friends, and and I liked hanging out with the biker type guys because there's no question about why you were there. I was just there to get as low as I could and not be messed with, and that was fine with them. And it was fine with me. Started getting into a little bit of, along with my alcohol, I always took the drugs. I started getting into a little recreational heroin shooting at the time, and that was fine with me too. I was pretty down, I get in these spots where I just didn't care, and that was all right, at the time. It scares the hell out of me looking back at it now, because I really like being alive, and that was real. All that, drinking so much is real. As it progresses, it's so close to being dead all the time. And I'm really grateful for this program. Anyway, went into that for a while, and somewhere in there I got hepatitis real bad, and was sitting around the house recovering from that. And my brother's girlfriend knew a gal who had just broken up, and so we set up a blind date, and that's where I met Larimer St. As soon as I saw her, there's something special about her. I just, right off the bat, I felt comfortable with her, and that's not usual for me unless I'm really like loaded or something, and I wasn't that day. We went out and had a nice date, and here we are. Almost 25 years later, we're still together, and it's fantastic. The reason we're still together is because of these programs that we both work. That's what's really saved our butts and brought us together, because it was pretty hairy and scary at the end of my drinking for me, and I imagine it was, we've talked about it, it's just as bad for her, having to live with the maniac, the maniac in the house. And we were together a while, and we got pregnant. It used to be nice to be able to blame them for everything, wasn't it? We got pregnant and had a son, and then we got married, and up till the time we got married, I never heard anything about the way I drank, And then as soon as we got married, it was, she had this real weird philosophy about now that we're married, I should go to work on a regular basis, and I still have this philosophy of, work as little as possible and screw off as much as possible. I figured, why should that change? And consequently, it started between us, the battle. The quiet battle at first, where you just kind of walk around each other a little more in eggshells every day, depending on what's going on. Not that I didn't work at times. There are times I go to work and do good for a month or two, and not go on any stretches. But the disease is progressive, and those periods got shorter and shorter. And for me, when I would come back from drinking, and I'd have to come home and look at my wife and child, and I'd have to look at myself, and I didn't want to do that. So I get pissed at her, for loving me. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I used to get pissed at her for being there, and then we'd argue about this, and then I'd feel guilty and remorseful, and then I'd kind of clean up and go back to work, I didn't know that, that was my pattern until I got here and did an inventory and took at what my life was like. But I used to work real hard, try and do good, build some money up, build some confidence up, get her to love me again, so we could look at each other in the face without hating each other. And then I'd have to drink for some reason. I didn't understand what was going on with me. In the beginning of my drinking, it was always just for fun. We'd drink and it would have a good time, and then it just made no sense to me, alcoholism. Because things would be fine with me. Sometimes I'd be pissed and I'd drink, but other times life was perfectly normal. One time, example, I was cooking, it was her birthday, and I was home before her, and I was probably off that day, knowing me. But anyway, I was home, and I was frying some chicken for dinner, and then it dawned on me that I didn't have a birthday cake. So, I shut the chicken off and ran up to the store to get a birthday cake. And the next thing I know, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and bars closed. And I drive home, and I got the cake in the car, and I come in the door, and I'm pissed at her because she's not up waiting for me to come home with her birthday cake. Like she knows, that's what I'm doing. And so I woke her up, and we had the birthday cake, and Jesus. But she left the chicken on the stove, which is, I have to mention that because I saw that. When I saw the chicken, I knew that for a brief second I looked at what I'd been doing, but I couldn't face it, and I just buried it. It was real painful to see that I'd do something like that, and I didn't understand. It was real confusing to me. Last thing I remember was I picked up the cake and stopped by the bar to, tell everyone how wonderful it was my wife's birthday, and I was getting her a cake, and that's the last thing I remember. And it went on from there, it got more confusing as we went along, and somewhere in there I stopped drinking and started taking Antabuse. And I've been taking Valium along with my alcohol for a long time, and I quit drinking and taking any kind of, Valium or any kind of anything all at once, and you really shouldn't do that. I went through 9 very interesting days. Pretty scary. There was dogs barking in the neighborhood, and I didn't know what the sound was. I was scared to death of the Brady Bunch on television. We had a 1-month-old baby at the time, and he was our second son, and he was sitting on the on the floor there in his little seat. And anytime he'd move, I would just like go out of my mind, start yelling for Larimer St, and it just was real strange. But my wonderful thinking at the time, I figured, well, that's what it's like when you aren't loaded. And I figured, well, that must be reality, I really flipped out. Jeez. Anyway, I did that for about 9 days and didn't eat much, and shook a lot, and my body was bouncing all over and sweat a lot, and I didn't know if I was asleep or awake. And let you know how things were in our house. She didn't notice anything funny with me, You figure, well, there he is again, taking some stupid drug with his alcohol, and who knows what he's doing. But geez, it was just crazy, and I didn't know what was going on. I tried to go to work one day because that always seemed to make things better, and so I got up in the morning and I decided I'd shave my beard that I had. And so I got out this electric razor and shaved a hole about this big in this beard that I had and went off to work, because it was too tense for me to try and stay there and shave it. I had to, I was really quick, And I show up to work. I work with my dad and my brothers, and to show you how screwed up our family is, no one said a word. No one said, what happened to your beard, or, why are you sweating when you aren't even moving, and, why are you so jumpy? No one said a word, we just went about our day. Jehoshaphat. And then after that I went through 2 years of just kind of on the edge. That fear that I had that I was going to like blow apart any second from withdrawal was real close to just being there all the time. I went through 2 years of living like that, and at the end of those 9 days, I ran to the doctor and said, I'm losing my mind. He said, no, you're not. Here's some Miltowns to take. So I kind of took those Miltowns along with my antabuse for a couple years. And it was, yeah, what do you think? Yeah, it was just wonderful around the house. Christ. If anyone here who quits drinking, don't do it unless you can get a program of some kind. It's highly advisable. Because quitting drinking without any kind of tools to cope with our mind is just really ridiculous. Anyway, I went through 2 years of that fun, and off and on I would get real sloppy. I'd just take a lot of drugs, but and get comatose on the floor there. But what I really needed was a drink. After a couple of years of doing this, I went to the doctor, and I was getting sick inside is what it was. I just really needed a drink, and they were running some tests for me, and they gave me a shot of sodium pentothal and Valium to run this tube down my throat to see it was hurting so much inside, and all my symptoms went away. And it scared the hell out of me, and it relieved me at the same time. Again, I had those mixed emotions, and I was real relieved, but then really scared at the same time. And I got off the antabuse, and we went to the doctor, and he talked to us about that, and he says, well, you can wait, 6 weeks or so, or whatever long it was, and then do some social drinking. And I never heard of that before, but it had drinking in it, and it was fine with me. So I started back drinking again. I was really thirsty. And they, how they say that alcoholism is a progressive disease, and I'm here to attest to that, because I hadn't drank anything in 2 years, and it blew right by what I was like when I stopped drinking those 2 years previous. It was unbelievable. I started out trying to be real casual about it, like it's no big deal, but it just got real bizarre. The next 9 months were mostly blackout. I would wake up and have a drink in my hand and drink it, or I'd wake up or come to and have no drink and walk off and get it. And that's all I really remember of the next 9 months of our lives together. And I'm living at home with her and 2 kids while all this wonderful stuff's going on. I remember being, it's dark at night and just like one light on, and I come to out of my blackout, and it's like I'm riding around, watching myself do this every so often, and I find myself screaming, this anger, just enraged, screaming at the top of my lungs, and then that fast, I flip into hysterical laughing. I started doing things like that, and it was pretty scary, and I didn't know what the hell to do. I was just along for the ride. Alcohol had me, and I didn't even know it. I thought, just one more time, I'm just crazy like I always thought, and this is just more proof of it. It's just getting worse and worse. And I always had to drive when I drank, and kind of scary, of living like that and going out and driving your truck around. But I was out driving or drinking one night, and I got my truck and got arrested. Had another 502. I had 3 of those altogether. And, it wasn't the I don't know, that day wasn't such a bad day, I guess. I was just drinking beer, I think, at some bar. And anyway, I came out of a blackout and I was in the police station. And, I was taking the breath test. And what I heard was a voice. All I can do is relate this how it happened. It's pretty strange to me. But I heard a voice say to stop fighting. And I didn't take it as coming from anyone that was like the policeman standing next to me or anything. It was when I heard that voice, it came from a different place than I'd ever heard it. And when I heard it, just before I heard it, everything was kind of like quiet. And I heard that voice say that, and as I opened my eyes, came out of the black. It all happened really fast, like that. And I accepted that I shouldn't be fighting whenever I was fighting. That's all I need to know. I didn't think I accepted it or knew that I did. I just knew that when I heard that voice say to stop fighting, that I said yes somehow. And at the same time I had a realization that I was holding back on all kinds of things in my life, and whatever was going on with me, that knot that I had was kind of caused maybe by what I was doing or what I was fighting, even though I didn't know what any of this was. And so I agreed with that, and I blew on the breath thing and went back in my blackout. And that was the night of my last drunk. I haven't had a drink since. I remember waking up in the on the nice cold green floor there in the Redondo Beach drunk tank, and I didn't know. I didn't. It took me a long time in sobriety to really understand what went on that night. To place some emphasis on what really happened to me, and how my higher power saved my butt. But anyway, I got up the next day. My Larson came to get me, and I just felt different. That's all I know. Usually when I get arrested, I'm all pissed because they've arrested a law-abiding citizen. All that I was doing was drinking. How dare they? I didn't have anything to say this day. I just was quiet. I call it, everything was like one-dimensional. Everything was just flat. No turmoil, no happiness, but just was kind of quiet. And we went truck hunting. Again, I got a few truck hunters in here. You guys ever done that? And found the truck and went out to breakfast. And she was different too that day because she didn't give me any grief about what happened either. It was a really unusual but wonderful time in our lives, and we didn't even know it. So I went home, went upstairs, and slept for a couple days, and then came downstairs and said, "I need some help." And she said, "Here's a number for a hospital." And I called them, and that's a miracle. Normally it's just too much for me to handle to call anything. Any kind of responsibility is just incapable. And she's usually there to help me, but this time she wasn't. She said, "Here's a number," and I called them and went in there a few days later, and they put me in a psychiatric ward for a couple weeks. And the psychiatrist said to get in touch with your feelings, and I thought, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm here. And I wandered around the psychiatric ward for a couple weeks, and the way I was mentally then, I'm 32, and I have a general building contractor's license, and I have a wife and 2 children, and I'm walking around a psychiatric ward for a couple weeks thinking I have to be careful of what I think because they have cameras in the place, That was just out there. Boy, oh boy. That's my best shot of living, without a higher power and Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's where I was. I did get grateful over there once I left the psychiatric ward and was introduced to the alcoholism side of the hospital there, where they introduced me to AA. That's all they worked on in there was the steps and going to meetings and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And thank God for that, because I needed it. But once I look back at the psychiatric ward experience, I got really grateful that I was an alcoholic, because there's a lot of people in there who don't have any way to go. They really don't have any answers for those guys. They just give them some more pills and let them shuffle down the hall. And I watched I was only there a couple weeks, but you could still see the march in and out there. And I got real grateful for a chance to recover, from that experience. Like I said, lady came over and gave me the 20 questions just, as I was finishing my little stay there. And that was the first time I was, confronted with my drinking, or even, asked any questions about it, so to speak. And we started doing the 20 questions, and she'd ask the question, have you ever lost, not gone to work because of drinking? And I started to say, well, and then I just looked at her, and she just looked at me, and I was able to, for the first time, start laughing about what I'd done. And the well, for lack of a better word, for the bullshit answer I was trying to give her. I'd start to say it, and then we'd look at each other and I'd laugh about it. And that was the beginning of this recovery for me, and it's fantastic. It was really, it was a little scary, trying to get real with how you look at things and what you've been doing. But at the same time, there was something about this lady. She was a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and she'd been sober about 20 years then. That made me feel okay, made me feel comfortable. And then right off the bat, you got, they started talking about alcoholism, whatever the heck that was. I mean, it was killing me, and I was dying from it, and I didn't even know what it was. And they talked about how they were fearful, abnormally fearful in a lot of situations, and thinking negatively, and all this stuff fit for me, and overreacting and being so self-centered. And it was scary news, but good news. Because I knew it fit. Every time they'd say something about that I could relate to, that knot in here would kind of like back off a little bit. That still goes on with me today. I'm still as alcoholic as ever. If not, I think I'm more alcoholic actually, because I'm older. But I still come back this over and over again to the program because you guys have what I need. And being able to start to relate to some people on the planet Earth besides myself was a real treat. I knew you guys were like me, and I always thought that I was the only one who felt the way I felt, till I met you people in Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon, too, down the road, from the beginning of my recovery. I really took to it. I really needed it. I had a lot of confusion with God, when they, second step, God restore us to sanity. And then, I don't know, I was a couple weeks out of the hospital. I was upstairs in the bedroom there, going over the steps, trying to remember what they were. And I get to the third step, and I noticed I get really tense when I would try to run through that. And what I noticed I was doing is I was saying, okay, turn my will and my life over to God, and I was kind of like going like this with my will and life to give it to God, and then running away because I get real intense when I would say that. And I noticed that, and I had a real turning point that day. I was able to see what I was doing, and it dawned on me that I needed this higher power to keep me sober, and my life depended on that. And so I talked to my God that I was afraid of and said, I don't think this is going to be a working relationship if I'm afraid of you all the time, and I need your help to stay alive. So could you help me not be afraid of you? And I didn't get any booming answer, but I didn't get a no either. I felt this is fine. And from there it has progressed, And like I say, early on in life, I really enjoyed the hookup I would get when I would feel close to my concept of a higher power. I call him God. And you guys have reintroduced me to that, and it's just wonderful. There's a lot to learn about myself, and the more I can learn about myself, the more I can let go and, try and let God help me in my life. Or help me in my life. Yeah, he's there. I just have to stay out of the way. It's been real wonderful. There's so much to talk about up here. So much has gone on. I got sober in July 21st, 1979. We've had a lot of experiences since then. She didn't go to Al-Anon for a while. That's her story. But I was busy trying to stay sober, She was going nuts, and I didn't really notice it all that much because I was just flipped out trying to recover on my own. Occasionally I'd mention to her about Al-Anon, but I never harped on her about that. And, right off the bat, when I got an AA, I got a sponsor right away and went to meetings all the time, between 5 and 7 meetings a week for almost 3 years in there. And then, I still go to 3 or 4, depending on what's going on in our lives, sometimes more, sometimes less. But, I don't want to die behind drinking. There's nothing left in alcohol for me. It wasn't an answer, looking back, it wasn't an answer for quite a while I was still going after it. And I don't want any more of that. I don't want any more of that at all. I'm just grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous introducing me to the higher power again that has enabled me to live my life with some kind of... I get up in the morning. We got up this morning, and I didn't get up with a knot in my stomach or with a start or what did I do last night or, oh, Christ, I'm alive again. I'm still alive. And I used to do that all the time. And, I've been doing that for 17 years, and all I know is that you can't be drunk and grateful at the same time. So I was trying to take grateful for all of the things that come along, because I could never do that before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. Get out of bed, and we didn't yell at each other, and she wasn't on my back, and I wasn't on hers, and it was just it's a nice way to live, fantastic way to live. Geez, I was going to say something and it just went away. How unusual, huh? Geez. It's really nice, to come with a group of people where I can be myself, and it's really wonderful. I'm truly blessed. We're truly blessed for both these programs. Once you started going to Al-Anon, it was really good because we had a program we could, something we could share more. It was a little painful actually at first, because I couldn't get away with as much stuff as I used to because she was paying attention now, and but it's okay. Amends to Larcene. I didn't make a real specific amend, at the time. I just told her I was sorry for all the stuff I've done. But through the years we've been together and the two of us working a program, we've got to hit on all the points and things that, have gone on in the earlier years. And take care of that stuff, In the beginning, it took me, I didn't do my fourth step till I was 3 years sober. That's just, I would write and wouldn't be able to write anymore, and I still had a feeling inside that I wasn't finished. So I just kept pursuing it. It wasn't a real long thing, but it got me clean. In the process of the two of us doing that, we've been able to get to know each other pretty well. And that's pretty good most of the time, huh? It's actually quite wonderful. And we've been able to take this program home and apply it to our children, as best we can, and that's a really hard area because... well, you know how we are, and but at the same time, it's been real gratifying because these programs have been able to be there for our kids when they need us, and it always comes when we don't expect it, periods of growth with those guys, when you think it's things are darkest, things lighten up. Gee, I don't know what else to say. I think that's probably enough out of me. I know hopefully I got sober long enough for you guys. I don't know. I get real nervous, but. I just want to thank you for giving my life back to me. The world is a good place to be in now. Before I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to wake up, and I was incapable of believing in any purpose for being alive. I had plenty of love around me. I had my wife and my kids, and that would be good for a while, but then it would always go away. Somehow I'd sabotage it mentally or emotionally and just ruin the whole deal. And I never understood what was going on until I got here, and you guys have taught me about myself. And I'm really grateful for that, and thank you for having us. Okay.